ఇటు ఏం లేదు. స్నానం చేసా.
Important to me is that you count the number of F's that you find in this sentence. Please count the number of F's. Keep it quiet to yourself. Give you just another couple seconds here. 3, 2, 1. Raise your hand, please, if you found 3 and only 3 F's. Excellent, great. Did anybody find 4? Okay. Anybody find only 5 F's? And anybody find 6? There's 6 F's. What 2-letter word ending in F did many of us miss? Of. We'll make sure to get this to you so you can torment your friends and family at a later date. When I first was exposed to this over 12 years ago, I only found 3, and I felt really stupid. So I like to start every workshop, every class I teach with this to pass that feeling along. No, that's not why I do this. I do this because this is a perfect analogy for what we're going to be talking about today. The vast majority of us in this room, very smart people in this room, were not as effective as we could have been in this activity. We didn't get it right. And the same is true when it comes to speaking in public, particularly when spontaneous speaking. It's little things that make a big difference in being effective. So today we're going to talk about little things in terms of your approach, your attitude, your practice that can change how you feel when you speak in public. And we're going to be talking primarily about one type of public speaking. Not the type that you plan for in advance, the type that you actually spend time thinking about, you might even create slides for. These are the keynotes, the conference presentation, the formal toasts. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about spontaneous speaking. When you're in a situation that you're asked to speak off the cuff and in the moment. What we're going through today is actually the result of a workshop I created here for the business school. Several years ago, a survey was taken among the students, and they said, what are things we could do to help make you more successful here? And at the top of that list was this notion of responding to cold calls. Does everybody know what a cold call is? It's where the mean professor like me looks at some student and says, what do you think? And there was a lot of panic and a lot of silence. So as a result of that, this workshop was created, and a vast majority of first-year students here at the GSB go through this workshop. So I'm going to walk you through sort of a hybrid version of what they do. The reality is that spontaneous speaking is actually more prevalent than planned speaking. Perhaps it's giving introductions. You're at a dinner and somebody says, you know so-and-so, would you mind introducing them? Maybe it's giving feedback in the moment. Your boss turns to you and says, would you tell me what you think? It could be a surprise toast. Or finally, it could be during the Q&A session. And by the way, we will leave plenty of time at the end of our day today for Q&A. I'd love to hear the questions you have about this topic or other topics related to communicating. So our agenda is simple. In order to be an effective communicator, regardless of if it's planned or spontaneous, you need to have your anxiety under control. So we'll start there. Second, what we're going to talk about is some ground rules for the interactivity we'll have today. And then finally, we're going to get into the heart of what we will be covering. And again, as I said, lots of activity, and I invite you to participate. So let's get started with anxiety management. 85% of people tell us that they're nervous when speaking in public. And I think the other 15% are lying. Okay? We could create a situation where we could make them nervous too. In fact, just this past week, a study from Chapman University asked Americans, what are the things you fear most? And among being caught in a surprise terrorist attack, having your identity stolen, was public speaking. Among the top 5 was speaking in front of others. This is a ubiquitous fear and one that I believe we can learn to manage. And I use that word manage very carefully because I don't think we ever want to overcome it. Anxiety actually helps us. It gives us energy, helps us focus, tells us what we're doing is important, but we want to learn to manage it. So I'd like to introduce you to a few techniques that can work, and all of these techniques are based on academic research. But before we get there, I'd love to ask you, what does it feel like when you're sitting in the audience watching a nervous speaker present? How do you feel? Just shout out a few things. How do you feel? Uncomfortable. I heard many of you going, yes, uncomfortable. It feels very awkward, doesn't it? So what do we do? Now, a couple of you probably like watching somebody suffer, okay? But most of us don't. So what do? We sit there and we nod and we smile, or we disengage. And to the nervous speaker looking out at his or her audience, seeing a bunch of people nodding or disengaged, that does not help, okay? So we need to learn to manage our anxiety, because fundamentally, your job as a communicator, rather, regardless of if it's planned or spontaneous, is to make your audience comfortable. Because if they're comfortable, they can receive your message. And when I say comfortable, I am not referring to the fact that your message has to be sugar-coated and nice for them to hear. It can be a harsh message, but they have to be in a place where they can receive it. So it's incumbent on you as a communicator to help your audience feel comfortable. And we do that by managing our anxiety. So let me introduce you to a few techniques that I think you can use right away to help you feel more comfortable. The first has to do with when you begin to feel those anxiety symptoms. For most people, this happens in the initial minutes prior to speaking. In this situation, what happens is many of us begin to feel whatever it is that happens to you. Maybe your stomach gets a little gurgly, maybe your legs begin to shake, maybe you begin to perspire. And then we start to say to ourselves, oh my goodness, I'm nervous. Uh-oh, they're gonna tell I'm nervous. This is not gonna go well. And we start spiraling out of control. So research on mindful attention tells us that when we begin to feel those anxiety symptoms, we simply greet our anxiety and say, hey, this is me feeling nervous. I'm about to do something of consequence. And simply by greeting your anxiety and acknowledging it, that it's normal and natural. Heck, 85% of people tell us they have it. You actually can stem the tide of that anxiety spiraling out of control. It's not necessarily going to reduce the anxiety, but it will stop it from spinning up. So the next time you begin to feel those anxiety signs, take a deep breath and say, this is me feeling anxious. I notice a few of you taking some notes. There's a handout that will come at the end that has everything that I'm supposed to say, okay? Can't guarantee I'm gonna say it, but you'll have it there. In addition to this approach, a technique that works very well, and this is a technique that I helped do some research on way back when I was in graduate school, has to do with reframing how you see the speaking situation. Most of us, when we are up presenting, planned or spontaneous, we feel that we have to do it right. And we feel like we are performing. How many of you have ever acted, done singing or dancing? I'm not going to ask for performances now. Okay, many of you have. We should note that we could do next year maybe a talent show of alums. It looks like we got the talent there. That's great. So when you perform, you know that there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. If you don't hit the right note or your right line at the right time, at the right place, you've made a mistake. It messes up the audience. It messes up the people on stage. But when you present, there is no right way. There's certainly better and worse ways, but there is no one right way. So we need to look at presenting as something other than performance. And what I'd like to suggest is what we need to see this as is a conversation. Right now, I'm having a conversation with 100+ people rather than saying I'm performing for you. But it's not enough just to say this is a conversation. I want to give you some concrete things you can do. First, start with questions. Questions by their very nature are dialogic. They're two-way. What was one of the very first things I did here for you? I had you count the number of F's and raise your hands. I asked you a question. That gets your audience involved. It makes it feel to me as the presenter as if we are in conversation. So use questions. They can be rhetorical, they can be polling. Perhaps I actually want to hear information from you. In fact, I use questions when I create an outline for my presentations. Rather than writing bullet points, I list questions that I'm going to answer. And that puts me in that conversational mode. If you were to look at my notes for today's talk, you'll see it's just a series of questions. Right now, I'm answering the question, how do we manage our anxiety? Beyond questions, another very useful technique for making us conversational is to use conversational language. Many nervous speakers distance themselves physically. If you've ever seen a nervous speaker present, he or she will say something like this, "Welcome, I am really excited to be here with you." They pull as far away from you as possible because you threaten us, speakers. You make us nervous, so we want to get away from you. We do the same thing linguistically. We use language that distances ourselves. It's not unusual to hear a nervous speaker say something like, one must consider the ramifications, or today we're going to cover step 1, step 2, step 3. That's very distancing language. To be more conversational, use conversational language. Instead of one must consider, say this is important to you. We all need to be concerned with. Do you hear that inclusive conversational language? Has to do with the pronouns. Instead of step 1, step 2, step 3, first what we need to do is this. The second thing you should consider is here. Use conversational language. So being conversational can also help you manage your anxiety. The third technique I'd like to share is research that I actually started when I was an undergraduate here. I was very fortunate to study with Phil Zimbardo of the Stanford Prison Experiment fame. Many people don't know that Zim actually was instrumental in starting one of the very first shyness institutes in the world, and especially in the country. And I did some research with him that looked at how your orientation to time influences how you react. And what we learned is if you can bring yourself into the present moment, rather than being worried about the future consequences, you can actually be less nervous. Most of us, when we present, are worried about the future consequences. My students are worried they're not going to get the right grade. Some of you are worried you might not get the funding, you might not get the support, you might not get the laughs that you want. All of those are future states. So if we can bring ourselves into the present moment, we're not going to be as concerned about those future states, and therefore we'll be less nervous. There are lots of ways to become present-oriented. I know a professional speaker. He's paid $10,000 an hour to speak. It's a good gig. He gets very nervous. He's up in front of crowds of thousands. Behind the stage, what he does is 100 push-ups right before he comes out. You can't be that physically active and not be in the present moment. Now, I'm not recommending all of us go to that level of exertion because he starts out of breath and sweaty. Right? But a walk around the building before you speak, that can do it. There are other ways. If you've ever watched athletes perform and get ready to do their event, they listen to music. They focus on a song or a playlist that helps get them in the moment. You can do things as simple as counting backwards from 100 by tough numbers like 17. I'm going to pause because I know people in the room are trying. Yeah. Gets hard after that third or fourth one, I know. My favorite way to get present-oriented is to say tongue twisters. Saying a tongue twister forces you to be in the moment, otherwise you'll say it wrong. And it has the added benefit of warming up your voice. Most nervous speakers don't warm up their voice. They retreat inside themselves and start saying all these bad things to themselves. So saying a tongue twister can help you be both present-oriented and warm up your voice. Remember I said today we're going to have a lot of participation? I'm going to ask you to repeat after me my favorite tongue twister. And I like this tongue twister because if you say it wrong, you say a naughty word. And I'm going to be listening to see if I hear any naughty words this morning. Okay? Repeat after me. It's only 3 phrases. I slit a sheet. A sheet I slit. And on that slitted sheet I sit. Oh, very good. No shits. Excellent. Very good. Now, in that moment, you weren't worried about, I'm in front of all these people, this is weird, this guy's having me do this. You were so focused on saying it right and trying to figure out what the naughty word was that you were in the present moment. That's how easy it is. So it's very possible for us to manage our anxiety. We can do it initially by greeting the anxiety when we begin to feel those signs. We can do it when we reframe the situation as a conversation, and we do it when we become present-oriented. Those are 3 of many tools that exist to help you manage your anxiety. If you have questions about other ways, I'm happy to chat with you. And at the end, I'm going to point you to some resources that you can refer to help you find additional sources for you. So let's get started on the core part of what we're doing today, which is how to feel more comfortable speaking in spontaneous situations. Some very simple ground rules for you. First, I'm going to identify 4 steps that I believe are critical to becoming effective at speaking in a spontaneous situation. With each of those steps, I'm going to ask you to participate in an activity. None of them are more painful than saying the tongue twister out loud. They may require you to stand up, they might require you to talk to the person next to you, but none of them are painful. And then finally, I'm going to conclude with a phrase or saying that comes from the wonderful world of improvisation. Through the continuing studies program here at Stanford, for the past 5 years, I have co-taught a class with Adam Tobin. He is a lecturer in the creative arts department. He teaches film and new media, and he's an expert at improv. And we've partnered together to help people learn how to speak more spontaneously. We call it improvisationally speaking. And Adam has taught me wonderful phrases and ideas from improv that I want to impart to you that really stick. That's why I'm sharing them with you, to help you remember these techniques. And again, at the end of all this, you'll get a handout that has this listed. So let's get started. The very first thing that gets in people's way when it comes to spontaneous speaking is themselves. We get in our own way. We want to be perfect. We want to give the right answer. We want our toast to be incredibly memorable. These things are burdened by our effort, by our trying. The best thing we can do, the first step in our process, is to get ourselves out of the way. Easier said than done. Most of us in this room are in this room because we are type A personalities. We work hard, we think fast, we make sure that we get things right. But that can actually serve as a disservice as we try to speak in the moment. I'd like to demonstrate a little of this for you, and I need your help to do that. So we're going to do our first activity. We are going to do an activity that's called Shout the Wrong Name. In a moment, if you are able and willing, I'm going to ask you to stand. And I'm going to ask you for about 30 seconds to look all around you in this environment, and you are going to point at different things. And I know it's rude to point, but for this exercise, please point. I want you to point to things, and you are going to call the things you are pointing to out loud anything but what they really are. So I might point to this and say refrigerator. I might point to this and say cat. I am pointing to anything in your environment around you. It can be the person sitting next to you, standing next to you. You will just shout, and shouting is important, the wrong name. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to stand and do that. Please raise your hand if you already have the first 5 or 6 things you're going to call out. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. We stockpile. You all are excellent game players. I told you the game. Shout the wrong name. And you have already begun figuring out how you're going to master the game. That's your brain trying to help you get it right. I'd like to suggest the only way you can get this activity wrong is by doing what you've just done. Okay? There is no way to get this wrong. Okay? Even if I call this a chair, no penalty will be bestowed upon you, okay? Because I won't know what you were pointing at. You could have been pointing at the floor under the chair, and you called the floor the chair, and you were fine. The point is, we are planning and working to get it right, and there is no way to get it right. Just doing it gets it right. Okay, so let's try this now. We're going to play this game twice. Again, it's for 30 seconds. If you are willing and able, will you please stand up? You can do this seated, by the way, but if you're willing and able, let's stand up. Okay, in a moment, I am about to say go, and I would like for you to point at anything around here, including me. It's okay to point at me. I hope it's not a bad thing you say when you point at me, but point at different things and loudly and proudly call them different than what they are. Ready? Begin. Porcupine, California, salt shaker, car, library, tennis racket, purple, orange, putrid, hello, time. You can stay standing because in a mere moments we're going to do it again. So if you're comfortable standing, we're about to do it again. First, thank you. That was wonderful. I heard great words being called out. It was fun. And some of you in the back were doing it in sync, so it looked like you were doing some 70s disco dance. It was awesome. Okay? This was great. Now, let me ask you just a few questions. Did you notice anything about the words that you were saying? Did we find patterns, perhaps? Maybe some of you are going through fruits and vegetables. A few of you are going through things that started with the letter A, right? That's your brain saying, okay, you told me not to stockpile, so I'm going to try to be a little more devious, and I'm going to give you patterns, okay? Same problem. When we teach that class I told you about, that improvisationally speaking class, we like to say, your brain is there to help you. These things it's doing have helped you be successful, but like a windshield wiper, we just want to wipe those suggestions away and see what happens, okay? So we're going to do this activity again. Ready? Begin. Kodak. Bicycle chain. Skateboard. Bananas. Purple. Putrid. Time. Please have a seat. Thank you again. Did you notice a difference between the second time and the first time? Yes. Was it a little easier that second time? No. That's okay. We're just starting. These skills are not like a light switch. It's not like you learn these skills and then all of a sudden you can execute on them. This is a wonderful game. This is a wonderful game to train your brain to get out of its own way. You can play this game anywhere, anytime. I like to play this game when I'm sitting in traffic. It makes me feel better. I shout things out. They're not the naughty things that I want to be shouting out, but I shout out things and it helps. You're training yourself to get out of your own way. You're working against the muscle memory that you've developed over the course of your life with a brain that acts very fast to help you solve problems. But in essence, in spontaneous speaking situations, you put too much pressure on yourself trying to figure out how to get it right. So a game like this teaches us to get out of our own way. It teaches us to see the things that we do that prevent us from acting spontaneously. In essence, we are reacting rather than responding. To react means to act again. You've thought it and now you're acting on it. That takes too long and it's too thoughtful. We want to respond in a way that's genuine and authentic. So the maxim I would like for you to take from this, and again, these maxims come from improvisation, is one of my favorite: dare to be dull. And in a room like this, telling you dare to be dull is offensive, and I apologize. But this will help. Rather than striving for greatness, dare to be dull. And if you dare to be dull and allow yourself that, you will reach that greatness. It's when you set greatness as your target that it gets in the way of you ever getting there. Because you over-evaluate, you over-analyze, you freeze up. So the first step in our process today is to get out of our own way. Dare to be dull. Easier said than done. But once you practice, and a game just as simple as the one we practiced is a great way to do it. But that's not enough. Getting out of our own way is important. But the second step of our process has us change how we see the situation we find ourselves in. We need to see the speaking opportunity that we are a part of as an opportunity rather than a challenge and a threat. When I coach executives on Q&A skills, when they go in front of the media or whatever, investors, they see it as an adversarial experience, me versus them. And one of the first things I work on is change the way you approach it. A Q&A session, for example, is an opportunity for you. It's an opportunity to clarify. It's an opportunity to understand what people are thinking. So if we look at it as an opportunity, it feels very different. We see it differently, and therefore we have more freedom to respond. When I feel that you are challenging me, I am going to do the bare minimum to respond and protect myself. If I see this as an opportunity where I have a chance to explain and expand, I'm going to interact differently with you. So spontaneous speaking situations are ones that afford you opportunities. So when you're at a corporate dinner and your boss turns to you and says, "Oh, you know him better than the rest. Would you mind introducing him?" You say, "Great, thank you for the opportunity," rather than, right? I better get this right. So see things as an opportunity. I have a game to play to help us with this. This is a fun one. The holidays are approaching. We all in this room are going to give and receive gifts. Here's how this game will work. It works best if you have a partner. So I'm hoping you can work with somebody sitting next to you. If there's nobody sitting next to you, you turn around, introduce yourself, great way to connect. If not, you can play this game by yourself. It's just a little harder and you can't do the second part of the game. So after I explain the game, this gives you a chance to get to know somebody. Here's how it works. If you have a partner, you and your partner are going to exchange imaginary gifts. Okay? Pretend you have a gift. It can be a big gift, it can be a small gift. And you will give your gift to your partner. Your partner will take the gift and open it up and will tell you what you gave them. Because you just gave them a gift. So you are going to open up the box and you're going to look inside and you are going to say the first thing that comes to your mind in the moment, not the thing you have all just thought of. Or the thing after that. Remember what we talked about before? That still plays. That's still in play. Okay, you're stockpiling. Look in there. My favorite that I said, somebody gave me a gift during playing this game. I looked inside and I saw a frog leg. I don't know why I saw a frog leg, but that's what I said. That's the first part of the activity. Now, the opportunity is twofold in this game. The opportunity is for you, the gift receiver, to name a gift. That's kind of fun. That's an opportunity. It's not a threat. But the real opportunity is for the gift giver, because the gift giver then has to say, so you look and you say, thank you for giving me a frog's leg. And the person will look at you and say, I knew you wanted a frog's leg because. So whatever you find, the person who has received it is going to say, absolutely, I'm so glad you're happy. I got it for you because. So you have to respond to whatever they say, right? What a great opportunity. Now, some of you are sitting there going, oh, that's hard. I don't want to do it. I'm going to make a fool out of myself. Others of you are, if you're following this advice, are saying, what a great opportunity, right? So the game, again, is played like this. You and your partner each will exchange a gift. One will start, then the other will follow. The first person will give a gift to the second person. Second person opens the box, however big the box is. And if the box is big and you find a penny in it, perfect, doesn't matter. If the box is heavy and you find a feather in it, fine. There's no way to get it wrong, okay? Whatever's in the box is in the box. You can return it and get what you wanted later, okay? The person, then, you will name it. You will say, thank you for the whatever you saw in the box. The person who gave it to you will say, I'm so glad you're excited. I got it for you because. And you will give a reason that you got them whatever they decided you gave them. Make sense? All right. So very quickly, just in 5 seconds, find a partner if you're willing to do this with a partner. Everybody have a partner? Okay. All right. In your partnerships, pick an A person and a B person. You may stand or sit. It's totally up to you. Pick an A and pick a B. Okay? B goes first. Ha, ha, ha. All right. B, give A a gift. B, give A a gift. A, thank them. And then B will name and give the reason they gave it to him. If you have not switched, switch, please. If you have not switched, switch, please. Let's wrap it up in 30 seconds, please. Let's wrap it up. All right, if we can all have our seats. If we can all take our seats, please. I know I'm telling a room of many MBA alums to stop talking, and that's hard. All right, ladies and gentlemen, did you get what you wanted? Pretty neat, huh? You always get what you want. Now, for some of you, this was really hard because you were really taking the challenge and not seeing what was in the box until you looked in there. Okay? Was anybody surprised by what you found in the box? What did you find, sir? What was in the box? What? Wow. Nice. Nice. If you've got a Ferrari, you need a transmission. I like it. Who else found something that was surprising? What did you find? A live unicorn. That's a great gift, right? How was it as the gift giver? Were you surprised at what your partner found in the box? Isn't it interesting that when we give an imaginary gift, knowing that the person's going to name it, we already have in mind what they're going to find? And when they say live unicorn, we go, well, that's interesting, right? So the point of this game is to, one, remind ourselves we have to get out of our own way like we talked about before, but to see this as an opportunity and to have fun. I love watching people play this game. The number of smiles that I saw amongst you, and I have to admit, when I first started, some of you looked a little dour, a little doubting, okay? But in that last game, you were all smiling and looked like you were having fun. So when you reframe the spontaneous speaking opportunity as an opportunity, as something that you can co-create and share, all of a sudden, you are less nervous, less defensive, and you can accomplish something pretty darn good. In this case, a fun outcome. This reminds us of perhaps the most famous of all improvisation sayings, yes and. A lot of us live our communication lives saying no but. Yes and opens up a tremendous amount of opportunities. And this doesn't mean you have to say yes and to a question somebody asks. This just means the approach you take to the situation. So you're going to ask me questions. That's an opportunity. Yes, and I will follow through. Versus no and being defensive. So we've accomplished the first two steps of our process. First, we get out of our own way. And second, we reframe the situation as an opportunity. The next phase is also hard, but very rewarding, and that is to slow down and listen. You need to understand the demands of the requirement you find yourself in order to respond appropriately. But often, we jump ahead. We listen just enough to think we got it, and then we go ahead, starting to think about what we're going to respond, and then we respond. We really need to listen. Because fundamentally, as a communicator, your job is to be in service of your audience. And if you don't understand what your audience is asking or needs, you can't fulfill that obligation. So we need to slow down and listen. I have a fun game to play. In this game, you are going to SPLLEVERYTHINGYOUSAY. TOYOURPARTNER. I will translate. You're going to get with the same partner you just worked with, and you are going to have a very brief conversation about something fun that you plan to do today. I know this is the most fun you're going to have all day, but the next fun thing you're going to do today, you are going to tell your partner what you are going to do that will be fun today, but you are going to do so by SPELLINGIT. Okay? So you're going to spell it. It's okay if you are not a good speller. Okay? You'll see the benefit of doing this. So, with the partner you just worked with, person A is going to go first this time. You are simply going to tell your partner, actually you're going to spell to your partner what it is of fun, something of fun, that you're going to do today. Okay? Do what you were really going to do for fun and not do things like FEEDTHECAT, right? Just because you don't want to spell, right? So you can use big words. All right, 30 seconds each. Spell to your partner something fun that you're going to do today. Would you like to play? Go ahead.
T-H-E-G-A-M-E.
Oh my goodness, say it again. Spell it again.
T-O.
Yep.
T-H-E.
Yep.
G-A-M-E.
EXCELLENT. IHOPETHAT THEYWIN.
E-X-L-C-E-L-L-E-N-T.
Thank you. That was very good. Thank you. If you have not switched, switch. Take 30 more seconds with the new partner spelling. GREAT exclamation point. THANKYOU PLEASE TAKEYOURSEAT. So what did we learn? What did we learn? Besides that we're not so good at spelling. You have to pause between the words. How did this change your interaction with the person you were interacting with? What did you have to do? Focus and listen. And you can't be thinking ahead. You have to be in the moment. When you listen and truly understand what the person is trying to say, then you can respond in a better way, a more targeted response. We often don't listen. So we start by getting out of our own way. We then reframe the situation as an opportunity. Those are things we do inside our head. But in the moment of interacting, we have to listen first before we can respond to the spontaneous request. Perhaps my most favorite maxim comes from this activity. Don't just do something, stand there. Listen, and then respond. Now, how do we respond? That brings us to the fourth part of our process. And that is, we have to tell a story. We respond in a way that has a structure. All stories have structure. We have to respond in a structured way. The key to successful spontaneous speaking, and by the way, planned speaking, is having a structure. I would like to introduce you to two of the most prevalent and popular and useful structures you can use to communicate a message in a spontaneous situation. But before we get there, we have to talk about the value of structure. It increases what is called processing fluency, the effectiveness of which or through which we process information. We actually process structured information roughly 40% more effectively and efficiently than information that's not structured. I love looking out in this audience because you will remember, as I remember, phone numbers. When you had to remember them if you wanted to call somebody. Okay, young folks today don't need to remember phone numbers. They just need to look at a picture, push a button, and then the voice starts talking on the other end. 10-digit phone numbers, it's actually hard to remember 10-digit phone numbers. How did you do it? You chunked it into a structure, 3, 3, and 4. Structure helps us remember. The same is true when speaking spontaneously or in a planned situation. So let me introduce you to two useful structures. The first useful structure you have probably heard or used in some incarnation. It is the problem, solution, benefit structure. You start by talking about what the issue is, the problem. You then talk about a way of solving it, and then you talk about the benefits of following through on it. Very persuasive, very effective. Helps you as the speaker remember it, helps your audience know where you're going with it. When I was a tour guide on this campus many years ago, what do you think the single most important thing they drilled into our head? It took a full quarter, by the way, to train to be a tour guide here. They used to line us up at one end of the quad and have us walk backwards straight. And if you failed, you had to start over. To this day, I can walk backwards in a straight line because of that. As part of that training, what do you think the most important thing they taught us was? Never lose your tour group. I'm not joking. Never lose your tour group. The same is true as a presenter. Never lose your audience. The way you keep your audience on track is by providing structure. None of you would go on a tour with me if I said, hi, my name's Matt, let's go. You want to know where you're going, why you're going there, how long it's going to take. You need to set expectations, and structure does that. Problem, solution, benefit is a wonderful structure to have in your back pocket. It's something that you can use quickly when you're in the moment. It can be reframed so it's not always a problem you're talking about. Maybe it's an opportunity. Maybe there's a market opportunity you want to go out and capture. It's not a problem that we're not doing it, but maybe we'd be better off if we did. So it becomes opportunity, solution, which are the steps to achieve it, and then the benefit. Another structure, which works equally well, is the what, so what, now what structure. You start by talking about what it is. Then you talk about why it's important, and then what the next steps are. This is a wonderful formula for answering questions, for introducing people. So if I'm in the moment somebody asks me to introduce somebody, I change the what to who. I say who they are, why they're important, and what we're going to do next. Maybe listen to them, maybe drink our wine, whatever, right? What, so what, now what? The reality is this: when you are in a spontaneous speaking situation, you have to do two things simultaneously. You have to figure out what to say and how to say it. These structures help you by telling you how to say it. If you can become comfortable with these structures, you can be in a situation where you can respond very ably to spontaneous speaking situations. We're going to practice, because that's what we do. Here's the situation. Is everybody familiar with this child's toy? It's a Slinky. Okay? You are going to sell this Slinky to your partner using either problem, solution, benefit, or opportunity, solution, benefit. What does the Slinky provide you? Or you could use what, so what, now what? What is it? Why is it important? And the next steps might be to buy it. Okay? So by using that structure, see how already it helps you? It helps you focus. Get with your partner. And we're only going to have one partner sell to the other partner. Okay? So get with your partner. One of you will volunteer to sell to the other. Okay? Sell a Slinky using problem, solution, benefit, or what, so what, now what. Please begin.
So we have the handouts, but I'm also going to be doing the
microphone?
mic.
So when I debrief this, you can go ahead and pass them out.
Okay,
Does
so
that make sense?
After Q&A?
No, after this activity.
Okay, and then after that we'll do Q&A.
Correct. "30 more seconds, please."
Guys,
All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's great to hopefully meet some of you, and I look forward to chatting with you about the Ignite program today. So my name is Kelsey Carlson. I am the Associate Director for Stanford Ignite. I have been doing this for a little over 8 years now. And I work closely with my colleague Jiaying, who is also on the info session. So the two of us will be your program team if you do join us for Ignite this fall. We also have a faculty director, Yossi Feinberg, and he is the professor who is responsible for developing the content of Ignite. He works closely with the venture teams throughout the program and is kind of our key faculty person throughout Ignite. So the three of us have been working together for years to put this program together, and are excited to hopefully have some of you join us this fall for our 2024 program. Stanford Ignite is a rigorous academic program. So our goal is to have a fairly intense academic experience over the course of the 4 weeks that you would be in the Ignite program. During that time, you'll learn the business and practical aspects of developing an innovative venture. So in order to achieve that, we bring in a dozen of the most senior and experienced professors at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. We're really fortunate to get to work with exclusively tenured faculty. These are all professors who teach in the MBA and MSX programs at Stanford. So for the most part, they're teaching cases and things like that they teach in their regular MBA classes. However, they are doing a version of, their regular kind of accounting content, their regular, marketing content, what have you, but that's tailored to entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs. So out of their, multiple quarter-long courses that they teach, they're choosing kind of their top 3 hours of content that they think are most important for an aspiring entrepreneur. There are sort of 3 categories of class sessions in the Ignite program. The first is our core business skills, and these are going to be things like marketing and operations and finance. And so kind of the things that you're going to need no matter what field of business you go into, and really those kind of textbook business categories. We also have sessions on applied skills like negotiation and communication, because these are skills that even if you know your finance, you know your marketing really well, in order to be a successful entrepreneur, to pitch to VCs and negotiate with clients, you're going to need to have some of these soft skills in order to really thrive in that environment. In addition to to these kind of core business concepts and soft skills, we do also have a couple of dedicated entrepreneurship classes. So the faculty director, Yossi, will kick us off with an entrepreneurship session. And then we'll also have some other things like design thinking that are really focused on the process of developing a new idea, running specifically a startup, prototyping, that sort of thing. In addition to the classroom content, we also have a team venture project. The project functions almost like a mock startup that you'll be in with 4 or 5 classmates. And during the course of the program, in addition to having these kind of classroom sessions during the day, you'll also have this hands-on way to apply what you're learning in the classroom in the venture project. So we'll have a series of assignments and check-ins with professors to kind of guide you through the process of developing an idea from inception all the way to a formal business model pitch to VCs at the end of the program. In order to support the project, you have structured assignments, as I mentioned, and then Professor Yossi Feinberg will meet with each team every week to have kind of small group time to give feedback on the venture project, and also just have a smaller, more intimate touch point with program participants. We also bring in a number of guest speakers and panelists and mentors from around the Silicon Valley, as well as the GSB. And some of these folks will be from military backgrounds, some will be kind of industry folks from the Silicon Valley. So our goal is to bring in kind of a wide range of people that have experience that might be relevant and helpful to you as you take the step in your career journeys. We'll also have virtual company visits with Bay Area companies. So we have some larger companies and some smaller startups that we'll do a workshop or a session with the program to again kind of bring in different resources that might be supportive to you. At the end of the program, everything culminates in a pitch to a panel of professional investors. This is not an opportunity for funding, so there's no like seed round funding or anything like that that can be raised through Ignite, but instead you'll give a full presentation like you would if you were pitching for funding, but in lieu of funding, you'll receive feedback. So the panelists will share with you what their thoughts were on your presentation, whether they would give you funding, and most importantly, why. So our goal is for you to leave knowing what you would need to do differently if you were to actually pitch to a panel of VCs and try to get a round of funding. The benefits of the program, we hope, will include some practical things. So learning the language of business, whether you are going into attempting to start a startup or going into a role at a large established company, having that language will help you, be able to, regardless of your background, sit down at the table and jump right in to your new role. We hope that you will develop skills to turn an idea into a successful venture. So even if your venture project in Ignite isn't something that you see yourself working on long term, maybe it's not your idea that you're working on, maybe at the end of the program you realize this idea is probably not going to be commercially viable, that's all okay. Our goal is that you are leaving with kind of a toolkit that you can use to do a mini Ignite on whatever ideas you have in the future, whether it's a startup concept or a project that you're working on at a company. You should also leave with improved teamwork, leadership, and public speaking skills, as well as an expanded network. So our current Ignite alumni pool is about 3,000 participants over the last 19 years. So at the end of the program, you'll be connected with all of them. And you'll also, of course, meet the mentors, the panelists, and the guest speakers who come in to help support the program. This program is held online using Zoom. So everything is fully live and real time. There's very little, there isn't any asynchronous class time. There are, case studies and some prep work videos and things that faculty will assign, but all of the instruction happens in real time in a fully interactive Zoom session. So for this reason, live attendance is required at all of the program sessions. Make sure to give you a consistent schedule and regular breaks to help reduce, the Zoom fatigue that I think a lot of us have probably discovered. And we also want to make sure that even though you're not physically in the same space as your fellow participants, you're getting that strong kind of socializing and networking experience of being in an Ignite program. So we'll have a number of virtual social events and networking activities to make sure that you are leaving the program with really strong connections to your fellow participants and are getting that chance to really strengthen your network during the Ignite program. We'll also create a Slack workspace and team channels so you have full virtual kind of environment to be interacting with each other in, to be interacting with Jiaying and Yossi and I in, to make sure that it's a really interactive online program. The program schedule is October 6th through 31st of 2024. So during that time, you'll have classes from 9 a.m. till about 3 p.m. every weekday. In addition, you'll have a team check-in on Saturday. So what that means is that it's not a full day of classes on Saturday, but at some time between about 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. on Saturday, your team will be scheduled for a half-hour check-in with Professor Feinberg to get that personalized feedback on your venture project. And then in addition to the live online components, we do have a pre-program component that starts on September 10th. So that's when everyone will be enrolled in our online classroom, start having access to program materials, and also start the venture idea submission process. So if you had an idea that you wanted to have formed into a venture team during Ignite, September 10th is when the process of submitting that idea would begin. Thanks to generous support from GSB Development and a number of organizations, we're able to offer this program at the reduced rate of $2,500. So that includes all of your program materials and all of the class time, kind of faculty fees, all of that. And unfortunately, that fee is not GI Bill eligible because it's a professional development program. At the end of the program, you'll receive a certificate of participation. So we don't have any grades or like transferable academic credits, but you are required to complete the program milestones and attendance standards in order to receive your certificate at the end. It's a selective program, so we want to make sure that we're creating a really strong cohort that will be where you'll have great teammates and a great network. So the exact program size depends on the applicant pool, but we will cap the program at around 50 to make sure that you're getting to have that meaningful kind of smaller group interaction during the 4 weeks that you're in the program. Our application deadline is Thursday, July 25th, so just about a month from today. And the online application so everything is in the online form, but that will include a series of essays and some kind of short answer questions, a resume or CV upload, one recommendation, which is uploaded via a form in the application itself. So you'll enter in your recommender's contact info and they will receive a link to fill out the form online. They don't need to send anything like signed on letterhead or anything like that. And typically for recommenders, we encourage you to choose someone who is either a supervisor or more senior colleague. They can also be a colleague at your level, or they can be somebody who you maybe don't work with, but who is a mentor in your life and knows you well enough to speak to kind of your ambitions and who you are as a teammate and a classmate. You also will be asked to do an online video interview. It's very similar to what an in-person interview would be like, except that you can do it whenever works for your schedule and the admissions committee can review it whenever works for their schedule. So when you start your online video interview, you'll be transferred to a different platform where you'll have an opportunity to practice kind of as much as you want, and you can leave and come back during that practice
The marathon.
Did you watch the Boston Marathon?
Yes, I went to Boston to see it.
You were in Boston for the marathon?
That's right. My friend is a runner, so I went there to watch her run. We traveled to Boston together.
You are so lucky. Which part of the marathon did you see?
I watched the entire race, from start to finish.
I don't know how the runners can finish the whole race. It's so long and difficult. I could never do something like that.
I tried to run a marathon once. It was really difficult. I just can't run like my friend can.
Yes, running a marathon is not an easy thing to do. By the way, how did your friend do in the race?
She did quite well. She was not the fastest runner, but she was in the top 50. Summer sports.
Hi, Alice. What have you been doing? You look tired.
I stayed up late last.
Conversation 1. Hiring room.
Hello?
Oh, hello. I wanted to inquire about hiring a room in the village hall for the evening of September the 1st.
Let me just see. Yes, we have both rooms available that evening. There's our main hall, that's got seating for 200 people. Or there's the Charlton room.
Sorry?
The Charlton room. CHARLTON. That's got seating for up to 100.
Well, we're organising a dinner to raise money for a charity, and we're hoping for at least 150 people. So, I think we'll go for the main hall. How much would that cost?
Let's see. You wanted it for the evening of September the 1st?
Yes, that's a Saturday.
So, from 6 p.m. to midnight, that'd be £115. That's the weekend price. It's £75 on weekdays.
That's all right.
And I have to tell you, there's also a deposit of £250, which is returnable, of course, as long as there's no damage. But we do insist that this is paid in cash. We don't take cards for that. You can pay the actual rent of the room however you like, though. Cash, credit card, cheque.
Oh, well, I suppose that's okay. So, does the charge include use of tables and chairs and so on?
Oh, yes.
And what about parking?
Yeah, that's all included. The only thing that isn't included is, you said you were organising a dinner.
Yeah.
Well, you'll have to pay extra for the kitchen if you want to use that. It's £25. It's got very good facilities, good quality cookers and fridges and so on.
OK. Well, I suppose that's all right. We can cover the cost in our entry charges.
Right, so I'll make a note of that. Now, there are just one or two things you need to think about before the event. For example, you'll have to see about getting a licence if you're planning to have any music during the meal.
Oh, really?
It's quite straightforward. I'll give you the details later on. And about a week or 10 days before your event, you'll need to contact the caretaker, that's Mr. Evans, to make the arrangements for entry. He'll sort that out with you.
And do I give him the payment as well?
No, you do that directly with me.
Right. Now, is there anything I need to know about what happens during the event?
Well, as you'll be aware, of course, the building is no smoking throughout.
Of course.
Now, are you having a band?
Yes.
Well, they'll have a lot of equipment, so rather than using the front door, they should park their van round the back and use the stage door there. You can open that from inside, but don't forget to lock it at the end.
OK.
And talking of bands, I'm sure I don't need to tell you this, but you must make sure that no one fiddles about with the black box by the fire door. That's a system that cuts in when the volume reaches a certain level. It's a legal requirement.
Sure. Anyway, we want people to be able to talk to one another, so we don't want anything too loud. Oh, that reminds me. We'll be having speeches. Are there any microphones available?
Yep, just let the caretaker know. He'll get those for you. Right, now, when the event is over, we do ask that the premises are left in good condition. So there's a locked cupboard, and you'll be informed of the code you need to open that. It's got all the cleaning equipment, brushes and detergent and so on.
Right. So what do we need to do after everyone's gone? Sweep the floors, I suppose?
Well, actually, they have to be washed, not just swept. Then you'll be provided with black plastic bags, so all the rubbish must be collected up and left.
Done by Akira Miyake and his team. Yeah, I was interested that the researchers were actually a mix of psychologists and physicists. That's an unusual combination.
Yeah, I got a little confused at first about which students the study was based on. They weren't actually majoring in physics, they were majoring in what's known as the STEM disciplines. That's science, technology, engineering and
math. Yes, but they were all doing physics courses as part of their studies.
That's correct. So, as I understood it, Miyake and co. started from the fact that women are underrepresented in introductory physics courses at college, and also that, on average, the women who do enroll on these courses perform more poorly than the men. No one really knows why this is the case.
Yeah, but what the researchers wanted to find out was basically what they could do about the relatively low level of the women's results. But in order to find a solution, they needed to find out more about the nature of the problem.
Right. Now, let's see if I can remember. It was that in the physics class, the female students thought the male students all assumed that women weren't any good at physics. Was that it? And they thought that the men expected them to get poor results in their tests.
That's what the women thought, and that made them nervous, so they did get poor results. But actually, they were wrong. No one was making any assumptions about the female students at all.
Anyway, what Miyake's team did was quite simple, getting the students to do some writing before they went into the physics class. What did they call it?
Values affirmation. They had to write an essay focusing on things that were significant to them, not particularly to do with the subject they were studying, but more general things like music or people who mattered to them.
Right. So the idea of doing the writing is that this gets the students thinking in a positive way.
And putting these thoughts into words can relax them and help them overcome the psychological factors that lead to poor performance. Yeah. But what the researchers in the study hadn't expected was that this one activity raised the women's physics grades from the C to the B range.
A huge change. Pity it wasn't to an A, but still. No, but it does suggest that the women were seriously underperforming beforehand in comparison with the men.
Yes. Mind you, Miyake's article left out a lot of details, like did the students do the writing just once or several times? And had they been told why they were doing the writing, that might have affected the results.
You mean if they know the researchers thought it might help them to improve, then they just try to fulfill that expectation?
Exactly. So anyway, I thought for our project we could do a similar study, but investigate whether it really was the writing activity that had that result.
OK, so we could ask them to do a writing task about something completely different, something more factual, like a general knowledge topic.
Maybe. Or we could have half the students doing a writing task and half doing something else, like an oral task.
Or even half do the same writing task as in the original research and half do a factual writing task. Then we'd see if it really is the topic that made the difference or something else.
That's it. Good. So, at our meeting with the supervisor on Monday, we can tell him we've decided on our project. We should have our aims ready by then. I suppose we need to read the original study. The article's just a summary.
And there was another article I read by Smolinski. It was about her research on how women and men perform in mixed teams in class, compared with single-sex teams and on their own.
Let me guess. The women were better at teamwork.
That's what I expected. But actually, the men and the women got the same results, whether they were working in teams or on their own. But I guess it's not that relevant to us.
What worries me, anyway, is how we're going to get everything done in the time.
We'll be okay now we know what we're doing. Though I'm not clear how we assess whether the students in our experiment actually make any progress or not.
No, we may need some advice on that. The main thing's to make sure we have the right size sample, not too big or too small.
That shouldn't be difficult. Right, what do we need to do next? We could have a look at the timetable for the science classes, or perhaps we should just make an appointment to see one of the science professors. That'd be better.
Great. And we could even get to observe one of the classes.
What for?
Well, OK, maybe let's just go with your idea. Right, well, I think that's everything for now.
Conversation 3. Election to the Youth Council.
Good morning, Youth Council. Caroline speaking.
Oh, hello. I'm interested in standing for election to the Youth Council, and I was told to give you a call.
That's good. Could I have your name, please?
Yes, it's Roger Brown.
Thank you. I'm Caroline, the Youth Council Administrator. So, do you know much about what the council does, Roger?
I've talked to Stephanie. I think she's the chair of the council.
That's right.
And she told me a lot about it. How it's a way for young people to discuss local issues, for example, and make suggestions to the town council. That's what made me interested.
Fine. Well, let me take down some of your details. First of all, how old are you? You know the council is for young people aged from 13 to 18.
I've just turned 18.
And where do you live, Roger?
Well, that's a bit complicated. At the moment, I'm looking for a flat to rent here, so I'm in a hostel from Monday to Friday. I go back to my parents' place at the weekend.
OK. So where's the best place to send you some information about the council?
Oh, to my parents' address, please. That's 17 Buckley Street, Buckleigh Street, Stamford, Lincolnshire. Though you don't really need the county.
Oh, I know Stamford. It's a lovely town. And what's the postcode?
PE9 7QT.
Right, thank you. So are you working here or are you a student?
I started studying at the university a couple of weeks ago, and I've got a part-time job for a few hours a week.
What do you do?
Well, I've done several different things. I've just finished a short-term contract as a courier, and now I'm working as a waiter in one of the big hotels.
Uh-huh. That can't leave you much time for studying.
Oh, it's not too bad. I managed to fit it all in.
What are you studying?
My ambition is to go into Parliament eventually, so my major subject is politics. That's partly why I think the Youth Council is important and want to be a part of it.
And I suppose you're also taking a minor subject, aren't you? I know a lot of people study economics too.
I chose history. To be honest, I'm not finding it as interesting as I expected.
OK, so with your studying and your part-time job, do you have time for any other interests or hobbies?
Well, I spend quite a lot of time cycling, both around town to get to university and to work, and also long distance, from here to London, for instance.
That's pretty impressive. Anything else?
For relaxation, I'm also keen on the cinema. I used to go at least once a week, but I can't manage to go so often now.
Right. Are you sure you'll have enough time for the Youth Council?
Yes, I've worked out that I can afford to reduce my hours at work, and that will make the time.
So is there any particular aspect of the Youth Council's work that appeals to you, Roger?
Well, my sister is blind, so I'm particularly interested in working with disabled young people to try and improve the quality of their lives.
That's great. Well, the best way to get involved is to be nominated by some people who you know.
Right. Can you tell me how to set about organising that?
You should talk to Jeffrey, our elections officer. I can arrange a meeting in the council office with him, if you like.
Yes, please.
He'll be here next Monday, if that suits you.
That's the 14th, isn't it?
Yes.
I can manage late afternoon.
Would you like to suggest a time? He generally leaves around 5:30.
Well, would 4:30 be okay? My last class finishes at 4, so I'd have plenty of time to get to your office.
Right, that's fine. Oh, and could I have a phone number we can contact you on?
Yes, my mobile number's 07788 136 711.
Thank you. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks very much. Goodbye.
Bye.
Conversation 4. Talking about the report on Rocky Bay.
I've brought my notes on our biology field trip to Rocky Bay, Colin, so we can work on our report on the research we did together.
OK. I've got mine too. Let's look at the aims of the trip first.
Right. What did you have?
I just put something about getting experience of the different sorts of procedures used on a field trip. But we need something about what causes different organisms to choose particular habitats.
I agree. And something about finding out how to protect organisms in danger of dying out.
In our aims? But we weren't really looking at that.
I suppose not. OK, now there's the list of equipment we all had to bring on the field trip. What did they tell us to bring a ruler for?
It was something about measuring the slope of the shore. But of course we didn't need it because we were measuring wind direction and we'd brought the compass for that.
But not the piece of string to hold up in the air. Didn't Mr. Blake make a fuss about us leaving that behind?
Yeah, he does go on. Anyway, it was easy to get one from another of the students.
Now, the next section's the procedure. I sent you the draft of that.
Yeah, it was clear, but I don't think we need all these details of what time we left and what time we got back and how we divided up the different research tasks.
OK, I'll look at that again.
Then we have to describe our method of investigation in detail. So let's begin with how we measured wave speed. I was surprised how straightforward that was.
I'd expected us to have some sort of high-tech device, not just stand there and count the number of waves per minute. Not very precise, but I suppose it was good enough. But the way we measured the amount of salt was interesting.
In the water from the rock pools?
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to check the chemicals we used in the lab when we analysed those samples. Was it potassium chromate and silver nitrate?
That's right.
OK. And we need the map of the seashore. You just left that to me. And I had to do it while the tide was low. Well, that was OK, but the place I started it from was down on the beach. Then I realised I should have gone up higher to get better visibility, so I had to start all over again. But At least I'd got the squared paper, or I'd have had problems drawing it all to scale.
Yeah, it looks good. We could get a map of the region off the internet and see if we need to make any changes.
I had a look, but I couldn't find anything. But you took some pictures, didn't you?
Yeah, I'll email you them if you want.
OK. I'll make my amendments using those. Then I can scan it into our report. Great. Now, when we get to our findings, I thought we could divide the problems organisms face in each zone. So for the highest area...
The splash zone?
Yeah. We found mostly those tiny shellfish that have strong, hard shells that act as protection.
But not from other organisms that might eat them. Predators.
No, that's not the main danger for them. But the shells prevent them from drying out because they're in the open air for most of the time.
Right. And since they're exposed, they need to be able to find some sort of shelter or cover themselves up so they don't get too hot. Then in the middle and lower zones, nearer the sea, we need to discuss the effects of wave action.
Yes, and how organisms develop structures to prevent themselves from being swept away or even destroyed by being smashed against the rocks.
I haven't done anything on the geological changes. I don't know what to put for that.
No, we weren't concentrating on that. Maybe we need to find some websites.
Good idea. I've got the lecture notes from Mr. Blake's geology course, but they're too general. But we could ask him which books on our reading list might be most helpful.
Right. OK. Now, I did a draft of the section of sources of possible error in our research, but I don't know if you agree. For example, the size of the sample and whether it's big enough to make any general conclusions from. But I thought, actually, we did have quite a big sample.
We did. And our general method of observation seemed quite reliable. But we might not be all that accurate as far as the actual numbers go.
Yeah, we might have missed some organisms, if they were hiding under a rock, for example. I wasn't sure about the way we described their habitats. I decided it was probably okay.
Yeah, and the descriptions we gave of the smaller organisms, they weren't very detailed, but they were adequate in this context. I'm not sure we identified all the species correctly, though.
Okay, we'd better mention that. Now, how are we going to...
Conversation 5. Asking about free activities.
Good morning, this is Burnham Tourist Office, Martin speaking.
Oh, hello. I saw a poster about free things to do in the area, and it said people should phone you for information. I'm coming to Burnham with my husband and 2 children for a few days on June the 27th, or possibly the 28th, and I'd like some ideas for things to do on the 29th.
Yes, of course. OK. Then let's start with a couple of events especially for children. The Art Gallery is holding an event called Family Welcome that day, when there are activities and trails to use throughout the gallery.
That sounds interesting. What time does it start?
The gallery opens at 10 and the Family Welcome event runs from 10:30 until 2 o'clock. The gallery stays open until 5, and several times during the day they're going to show a short film that the gallery has produced. It demonstrates how ceramics are made, and there'll be equipment and materials for children to have a go themselves. Last time they ran the event, there was a film about painting, which went down very well with the children, and they're now working on one about sculpture.
I like the sound of that. And what other events happen in Burnham?
Well, do you all enjoy listening to music?
Oh, yes.
Well, there are several free concerts taking place at different times, 1 or 2 in the morning, the majority at lunchtime and a couple in the evening, and they range from pop music to Latin American.
The Latin American could be fun. What time is that?
It's being repeated several times in different places. They're performing in the Central Library at 1 o'clock, then at 4 it's in the City Museum, and in the evening at 7:30 there's a longer concert in the theatre.
Right. I'll suggest that to the rest of the family.
Something else you might be interested in is the boat race along the river.
Oh, yes. Do tell me about that.
The race starts at Offord Marina to the north of Burnham and goes as far as Summer Pool. The best place to watch it from is Charlesworth Bridge, though that does get rather crowded.
And who's taking part?
Well, local boat clubs, but the standard is very high. One of them came first in the West of England Regional Championship in May this year. It was the first time a team from Burnham has won. It means that next year they'll be representing the region in the National Championship.
Now, I've heard something about Paxton Nature Reserve. It's a good place for spotting unusual birds, isn't it?
That's right, throughout the year. There is a lake there as well as a river, and they provide a very attractive habitat. So it's a good idea to bring binoculars if you have them. And just at the moment you can see various flowers that are pretty unusual. The soil at Paxton isn't very common. They're looking good right now.
Right. My husband will be particularly interested in that.
And there's going to be a talk and slideshow about mushrooms, and you'll be able to go out and pick some afterwards and study the different varieties.
Uh-huh. And is it possible for children to swim in the river?
Yes, part of it has been fenced off to make it safe for children to swim in. It's very shallow, and there's a lifeguard on duty whenever it's open. The lake is too deep, so swimming isn't allowed there.
OK, we must remember to bring their swimming things in case we go to Paxton. How long does it take to get there by car from Burnham?
About 20 minutes, but parking is very limited, so it's usually much easier to go by bus, and it takes about the same time.
Right. Well, I'll discuss the options with the rest of the family. Thanks very much for all your help.
You're welcome.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Conversation 6. Discussing project for the course.
Hello, Helen. Sorry I'm late.
Hi, Jeremy. No problem. Well, we'd better work out where we are on our project, I suppose.
Yeah, I've looked at the drawings you've done for my story, The Forest, and I think they're brilliant. They really create the atmosphere I had in mind when I was writing it.
Oh, I'm glad you like them.
There are just a few suggestions I'd like to make.
Go ahead.
Now, I'm not sure about the drawing of the cave. It's got trees all around it, which is great, but the drawing's a bit too static, isn't it? I think it needs some action.
Yes, there's nothing happening. Perhaps I should add the boy, Malcolm, isn't it? He would be walking up to it.
Yes, let's have Malcolm in the drawing. And what about putting in a tiger? The one that he makes friends with a bit later. Maybe it could be sitting under a tree, washing itself.
And the tiger stops in the middle of what it's doing when it sees Malcolm walking past.
That's a good idea.
OK, I'll have a go at that.
Then there's the drawing of the crowd of men and women dancing. They're just outside the forest, and there's a lot going on.
That's right. You wanted them to be watching a carnival procession, but I thought it would be too crowded. Do you think it works like this?
Yes, I like what you've done. The only thing is, could you add Malcolm to it without changing what's already there?
What about having him sitting on the tree trunk on the right of the picture?
Yes, that would be fine.
And do you want him watching the other people?
No, he's been left out of all the fun, so I'd like him to be crying. That'll contrast nicely with the next picture, where he's laughing at the clowns in the carnival.
Right, I'll do that.
And then the drawing of the people ice skating in the forest.
I wasn't too happy with that one. Because they're supposed to be skating on grass, aren't they?
That's right, and it's frozen over. At the moment, it doesn't look quite right.
I see what you mean. I'll have another go at that.
And I like the wool hats they're wearing. Maybe you could give each of them a scarf as well?
Yeah, that's easy enough. They can be streaming out behind the people to suggest they're skating really fast.
Great. Well, that's all on the drawings.
Right. So you finish writing your story, and I just need to finish illustrating it, and my story and your drawings are done. So the next thing is to decide what exactly we need to write about in the report that goes with the stories, and how we're going to divide the work.
Right, Helen.
What do you think about including a section on how we planned the project as a whole, Jeremy? That's probably quite important.
Yeah, well, you've had most of the good ideas so far. How do you feel about drafting something? Then we can go through it together and discuss it.
OK, that seems reasonable. And I could include something on how we came up with the ideas for our two stories, couldn't I?
Well, I've started writing something about that, so why don't you do the same and we can include the two things?
Right. So what about our interpretation of the stories? Do we need to write about what we think they show, like the value of helping other people or that sort of thing?
That's going to come up later, isn't it? I think everyone in the class is going to read each other's stories and come up with their own interpretations, which we're going to discuss.
Oh, I missed that. So it isn't going to be part of the report at all?
No. But we need to write about the illustrations because they're an essential element of children's experience of reading the stories. It's probably easiest for you to write that section, as you know more about drawing than I do.
Maybe, but I find it quite hard to write about. I'd be happier if you did it.
Okay. So when do you think we can get this ready?
Conversation 7. Asking for information about the festival.
Good morning, Stretton Festival box office. How can I help you?
Oh, hello. My family and I are on holiday in the area, and we've seen some posters about the festival this week. Could you tell me about some of the events, please?
Of course.
First of all, are there still tickets available for the jazz band on Saturday?
There are, but only £15. The £12 seats have all been sold.
OK, and the venue is the school, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. The secondary school. Make sure you don't go to the primary school by mistake. And there's an additional performer who isn't mentioned on the posters. Carolyn Hart is going to play with the band.
Oh, I think I've heard her on the radio. Doesn't she play the oboe or flutes or something?
Yes, the flute. She usually plays with symphony orchestras, and apparently this is her first time with a jazz band.
Well, I'd certainly like to hear her. Then the next thing I want to ask about is the duck races. I saw a poster beside a river. What are they exactly?
Well, you buy a yellow plastic duck, or as many as you like. They're £1 each. And you write your name on each one. There'll be several races, depending on the number of ducks taking part. And John Stevens, a champion swimmer who lives locally, is going to start the races. All the ducks will be launched into the river at the back of the cinema. Then they'll float along the river for 500 metres, as far as the railway bridge.
And are there any prizes?
Yes. The first duck in each race to arrive at the finishing line wins its owner free tickets for the concert on the last night of the festival.
You said you can buy a duck. I'm sure my children will both want one.
They're on sale at a stall in the market. You can't miss it. It's got an enormous sign showing a couple of ducks.
OK, I'll go there this afternoon. I remember walking past there yesterday. Now, could you tell me something about the flower show, please?
Well, admission is free, and the show is being held in Bythwaite Hall.
Sorry, how do you spell that?
Bythwaite. Bythwaite.
Is it easy to find? I'm not very familiar with the town yet.
Oh, you won't have any problem. It's right in the centre of Stretton. It's the only old building in the town, so it's easy to recognise.
I know it. I presume it's open all day.
Yes, but if you'd like to see the prizes being awarded for the best flowers, you'll need to be there at 5 o'clock. The prizes are being given by a famous actor, Kevin Shapless. He lives nearby and gets involved in a lot of community events.
Gosh, I've seen him on TV. I'll definitely go to the prize giving.
Right.
I've seen a list of plays that are being performed this week, and I'd like to know which are suitable for my children and which ones my husband and I might go to.
How old are your children?
5 and 7. What about The Mystery of Muldoon?
That's aimed at 5 to 10-year-olds.
So if I take my children, I can expect them to enjoy it more than I do?
I think so. If you'd like something for yourself and your husband and leave your children with a babysitter, you might like to see Fire and Flood. It's about events that really happened in Stretton 200 years ago, and children might find it rather frightening.
Oh, thanks for the warning. And finally, what about Silly Sailor?
That's a comedy, and it's for young and old. In fact, it won an award in the Stretton Drama Festival a couple of months ago.
OK. Well, goodbye and thanks for all the information. I'm looking forward to the festival.
Goodbye.
Conversation 8. Talking about research project.
Hi, Joanna. Good to meet you. Now, before we discuss your new research project, I'd like to hear something about the psychology study you did last year for your master's degree. So, how did you choose your subjects for that?
Well, I had 6 subjects, all professional musicians and all female. 3 were violinists, and there was also a cello player and a pianist and a flute player. They were all very highly regarded in the music world, and they'd done quite extensive tours in different continents, and quite a few had won prizes and competitions as well.
And they were quite young, weren't they?
Yes, between 25 and 29. The mean was 27.8. I wasn't specifically looking for artists who'd produced recordings, but this is something that's just taken for granted these days, and they all had.
Right. Now, you collected your data through telephone interviews, didn't you?
Yes. I realised if I was going to interview leading musicians, it'd only be possible over the phone because they're so busy. I recorded them using a telephone recording adapter. I'd been worried about the quality, but it worked out all right. I managed at least a 30-minute interview with each subject, sometimes longer.
Did doing it on the phone make it more stressful?
I'd thought it might. It was all quite informal, though, and in fact they seemed very keen to talk. And I don't think using the phone meant I got less rich data. Rather the opposite, in fact.
Interesting. And you were looking at how performers dress for concert performances?
That's right. My research investigated the way players see their role as a musician and how this is linked to the type of clothing they decide to wear. But that focus didn't emerge immediately. When I started, I was more interested in trying to investigate the impact of what was worn on those listening, and also whether someone like a violinist might adopt a different style of clothing from, say, someone playing the flute or the trumpet.
It's interesting that the choice of dress is up to the individual, isn't it?
Yes, you'd expect there to be rules about it in orchestras, but that's quite rare.
You only had women performers in your study. Was that because male musicians are less worried about fashion?
I think a lot of the men are very much influenced by fashion, but in social terms, the choices they have are more limited. They'd really upset audiences if they strayed away from quite narrow boundaries.
Now, popular music has quite different expectations. Did you read Mike Frost's article about the dress of women performers in popular music?
No.
Well, he points out that a lot of female singers and musicians in popular music tend to dress down in performances and wear less feminine clothes, like jeans instead of skirts. And he suggests this is because otherwise they'd just be discounted as trivial.
But you could argue they're just wearing what's practical. I mean, a pop music concert is usually a pretty energetic affair.
Yes, he doesn't make that point, but I think you're probably right. I was interested by the effect of the audience at a musical performance when it came to the choice of dress.
The subjects I interviewed felt this was really important. It's all to do with what we understand by performance as a public event. They believed the audience had certain expectations, and it was up to them as performers to fulfil these expectations, to show a kind of esteem.
They weren't afraid of looking as if they'd made an effort to look good.
I think in the past, the audience would have had those expectations of one another too, but that's not really the case now. Not in the UK, anyway.
No.
And I also got interested in what sports scientists are doing too, with regard to clothing.
Musicians are quite vulnerable physically, aren't they? Because the movements they carry out are very intensive and repetitive. So I'd imagine some features of sports clothing could safeguard the players from the potentially dangerous effects of this sort of thing.
Yes, but musicians don't really consider it. They avoid clothing that obviously restricts their movements, but that's as far as they go.
Anyway, coming back to your own research, do you have any idea where you're going from here?
I was thinking of doing a study using an audience, including...
Conversation 1. Ringing about the job.
Good evening, King's Restaurant.
Good evening. I'm ringing about the job I understand you have vacant.
Oh, yes.
I'd like to find out a few more details, if I may.
Yes, of course. Can I take your name?
It's Peter Chin.
Okay, Peter. Well, if you want to ask about the job, and then if we're both still interested, we could arrange for you to come for an interview.
Great, thanks. I'm afraid I missed the advert for the job, but heard about it from a friend.
That's no problem at all. What would you like to know?
Well, what sort of work is it? Washing up?
It's answering the phone.
Oh, right, fine.
And not waiting at table.
That'd be good. And how many nights a week would it be?
Well, we're really only busy at the weekend.
So 2 nights?
3, actually, so it would work out at 12 hours a week.
That'd be fine. It wouldn't interfere with my studies.
Are you at the university?
Yes, first-year physics student.
Oh, right.
And because I'm not an EU national, would I need a work permit?
Yes, you would. Just get your tutor to sign it.
That wouldn't be a problem if I were to get the job. Where exactly is the restaurant?
Well, we have 2 branches. The one we're recruiting for is in Hillsdon Road.
I don't know that. How do you spell it, please?
It's HILLSDUNNE Road.
Got that. Thanks. Is it near a bus stop?
Yes, the nearest one would probably be just beside the library.
Oh, yes, I know it. That'd be fine for me. And could I ask about the pay?
We're offering £4.45 an hour.
That's very good. My last job was £3.95 an hour.
We feel it's pretty good, and we also offer some good fringe benefits.
Really?
Well, we give you a free dinner, so you eat well.
Right. Better than hostel food.
We certainly hope so. And we also offer extra pay for working on national holidays.
Oh, that's a really good perk, isn't it?
Yes, we think so. And then because of the difficulties of getting public transport, if you're working after 11 o'clock, we drive you home.
Oh, that's good to know.
Well, we'd certainly be interested in inviting you for an interview, if you're still interested.
Oh, yes, certainly. Could I just also ask what qualities you're looking for?
Well, for this particular job, we want a clear voice, which you obviously do have.
Thanks.
And you must be able to think quickly, you know.
Well, I hope I...
So, when could you come in for an interview? We're actually quite quiet tonight.
Sorry, I couldn't come tonight. Or tomorrow, I'm afraid. Thursday's okay. That'd be 22nd of October.
Fine. After 5 p.m.?
Yes, fine. Would 6 o'clock be okay?
Perfect. And could you bring along the names of 2 referees?
Yes, that's fine. No problem.
Good. I look forward to seeing you.
Oh, by the way, who should I ask for?
Oh, yes, of course. Sorry. My name is Samira Manuja.
Can you spell that, please?
Manuja.
Okay. I've got that. Thanks very much.
Look forward to seeing you later on, then.
Conversation 2. Study experiences.
Before we start, Spiros and Hiroko, thanks for coming in today to talk about your recent study experiences, and congratulations to you both in doing so well in your first semester exams.
Thank you.
I'd like to discuss with you the value of the English for Academic Purposes course you did here last year before starting your university course. Spiros, if I could start with you, what parts of the program have now proved to be particularly valuable to you?
I think that having to do a seminar presentation really helped me. For example, a couple of weeks ago in our marketing subject, when it was my turn to give a presentation, I felt quite confident. Of course, I was still nervous, but because I had done one before, I knew what to expect. Also, I know I was well prepared, and I had practiced my timing. In fact, I think that in relation to some of the other people in my group, I did quite a good job, because my overall style was quite professional. What about you, Hiroko?
That's interesting. In my group, I was really surprised by the way the students did their presentations. They just read their notes aloud. Can you believe that? They didn't worry about their presentation style or keeping eye contact with their audience. And I remembered that these things were really stressed to us in the course here.
So, how did you approach your presentation, Hiroko?
Well, to speak frankly, I read my notes too. At the time, it was a relief to do it this way, but actually when I had finished, I didn't feel any real sense of satisfaction. I didn't feel positive about the experience at all.
That's a pity. You know, although I was pleased with my presentation, I am not so pleased with my actual performance right now in the tutorials. During the whole semester, I've not said anything in our tutorial discussions. Not a word.
Really, Spiros? Why is that? Do the other students talk too much?
It's partly that, but it's mostly because I have had no confidence to speak out. Their style of speaking is so different. It's not the style we were used to during the course. They use so many colloquialisms. They're not very polite, and sometimes there seems to be no order in their discussion. Also, they are very familiar with each other, so because they know each other's habits, they can let each other into the discussion.
You're right, Spiros. I have experienced... For most of this semester, I've said absolutely nothing in tutorials. But recently, I've been trying to speak up more, and I just jump in. And I've noticed an interesting thing. I've noticed that if they thought my point was interesting or new, then the next time they actually asked for my opinion. And then it was much easier for me to be part of the discussion.
Oh, that's great, Hiroko. I hope that happens for me next semester. I'll have to work hard to find some interesting points. What helped you to find these ideas?
I think that one thing that helped me with this was the reading. I've had to do so much reading this semester just to help me make sense of the lectures. At first, I couldn't understand what the lectures were talking about, so I had to turn to the books and journals. Every night I read for hours, using the lists of references that were given, and I made pages of notes. At breakfast, I read and read my notes again. This habit has helped me to follow the ideas in the lectures, and it's also given me some ideas to use in the tutorials.
But I did so much reading anyway. I don't think there's any time left over for anything extra. My reading speed is still quite slow, though I'm much better at dealing with vocabulary than I used to be.
What else do you think we could add to the course program to help with this reading problem?
There's not really anything because it's my problem. I remember we were given long articles to read. We didn't like that, but now I realize that reading those long articles was good preparation for the things I need to read now. Also, in class, we regularly had speed reading tasks to do, and we kept a record of our reading speed, so the teachers were encouraging us to work on that.
That's true, Spiros, but what we read could have been different. Sometimes in the English class, I felt frustrated when I had to read articles about the environment or health or education, because I wanted to concentrate on my own field, but we didn't read anything about engineering. So I think I wasted some time learning vocabulary I didn't need.
But surely the strategies you were taught for dealing with that vocabulary were helpful?
Yes, but psychologically speaking, I would have felt much better working on reading from my own field. What do you think, Spiros?
Oh, I agree. That would have helped my confidence too, and I would have been more motivated. It was good, though, that we could work on our own topics when we wrote the research assignments.
Okay, let's move on to writing now.
Conversation 3. Accommodation arrangement.
Good morning. Can I help you?
Yes, I've just been accepted on a course at the university, and I'd like to try and arrange accommodation in a hall of residence.
Yes, certainly. Please sit down. What I'll do is fill in a form with you to find out a little more about your preferences and so forth.
Thank you.
So, first of all, can I take your name?
It's Anu Bhatt.
Could you spell your name, please?
Yes. ANUBHATT.
Thanks. And could I ask your date of birth?
The 31st of March, 1972.
Thank you. And where are you from?
India.
Oh, right. And what will you be studying?
I'm doing a course in nursing.
Right, thank you. And how long would you want to stay in Hall, do you think?
Well, it'll take 3 years, but I'd only like to stay in Hall for 2. I'd like to think about living outside for the 3rd year.
Fine. And what did you have in mind for catering? Do you want to cook for yourself or have all your meals provided? That's full board.
Is there something in between?
Yes, you can just have evening meal provided, which is half board.
That's what I'd prefer.
Yes, a lot of students opt for that. Now, with that in mind, do you have any special diet, anything we should know about?
Yes, I don't take red meat.
No red meat. Now, thinking about the room itself, we have a number of options. You can have a single study bedroom, or you can have a shared one. These are both what we call simple rooms. The other alternative is to opt for a single bedsit, which actually has more space and better facilities. There's about £20 a week difference between them.
Well, actually, my grant is quite generous, and I think the bedsit sounds the best option.
Lovely. I'll put you down for that, and we'll see what availability is like. Now, can I ask some other personal details which we like to have on record?
Yes, of course.
I wonder if you could let us know what your interests are. This might help us get a closer match for placing you in a particular hall.
Well, I love the theatre.
Right.
And I enjoy sports, particularly badminton.
Ah, that's worth knowing. Now, what we finish with on the form is really a list from you of what your priorities are in choosing a hall, and we'll do our best to take these into account.
Well, the first thing is I'd prefer a hall where there are other mature students, if possible.
Yes, we do have halls which tend to cater for slightly older students.
And I'd prefer to be out of town.
That's actually very good for you because we tend to have more vacancies in out-of-town halls.
Lucky.
Yes. Anything else?
Well, I would like somewhere with a shared area, a TV room, for example, or something like that. It's a good way to socialise.
It certainly is.
That's it.
Now, we just need a contact telephone number for you.
Oh, sure, I'll just find it. It's 667549.
Great. So we'll be in contact with you as soon as possible.
Conversation 4. Self-Access Centre.
Hi, Yun. As you know, I've asked you here today to discuss the future of our Self-Access Centre. We have to decide what we want to do about this very important resource for our English language students. So, can you tell me what the students think about this?
Well, from the students' point of view, we would like to keep it. The majority of students say that they enjoy using it because it provides a variation on the classroom routine, and they see it as a pretty major component of their course. But we would like to see some improvements to the equipment, particularly the computers. There aren't enough for one each at the moment, and we always have to share.
Well, yes, the teachers agree that it is a very valuable resource, but one thing we have noticed is that a lot of the students are using it to check their personal emails. We don't want to stop you students using it, but we think the computers should be used as a learning resource, not for emails. Some of us also think that we could benefit a lot more by relocating the Self-Access Centre to the main university library building. How do you think the students would feel about that, Yun?
Well, the library is big enough to incorporate the Self-Access Centre, but it wouldn't be like a class activity anymore. Our main worry would be not being able to go to a teacher for advice. I'm sure there would be plenty of things to do, but we really need teachers to help us choose the best activities.
Well, there would still be a teacher present and he or she would guide the activities of the students We wouldn't just leave them to get on with it.
Yes, but I think the students would be much happier keeping the existing setup. They really like going to the self-access centre with their teacher and staying together as a group to do activities. If we could just improve the resources and facilities, I think it would be fine. Is the cost going to be a problem?
It's not so much the expense that I'm worried about, and we've certainly got room to do it, but it's the problem of timetabling a teacher to be in there outside class hours. If we're going to spend a lot of money on equipment and resources, we really need to make sure that everything is looked after properly. Anyway, let's make some notes to see just what needs doing to improve the centre. Now, what about the computers? I think it might be a good idea to install some new models. They would take up a lot less room, and so that would increase the workspace for textbooks and so on.
That would be great. It is a bit cramped in there at times.
What about other resources? Do you have a list of things that the students would like to see improved?
Yes, one of the comments that students frequently make is that they find it difficult to find materials that are appropriate for their level, especially reading resources. So I think we need to label them more clearly.
Well, that's easy enough. We can get that organised very quickly. In fact, I think we should review all of the study resources as some of them are looking a bit out of date.
Definitely. The CD section especially needs to be more current. I think we should get some of the ones that go with our latest course books and also make multiple copies.
Good. Now, I was also thinking about some different materials that we haven't got in there at all. What do you think of the idea of introducing some workbooks? If we break them up into separate pages and laminate them, they'd be a great resource. The students could study the main course book in class and then do follow-up practice in the self-access centre.
That sounds good.
OK. Now, finally, we need to think about how the room is used. I'll have to talk to the teachers and make sure we can all reach some agreement on a timetable to supervise the centre after class. But we also need to think about security too, especially if we're going to invest in some new equipment.
What about putting in an alarm?
Good idea. The other thing I'd like to do is talk to our technicians and see whether we could somehow limit the access to email. I really don't want to see that resource misused.
What about if we agree to only use it before and after class?
Yes, that would be fine. OK, anyway, that's great for now. We'll discuss it further when we've managed to...
Conversation 5. Renting holiday apartments.
Greek Island Holidays, can I help you?
Yes, I hope so. I have a friend who's just come back from Corfu, and she's recommended some apartments in Arilus. She thought they might be on your list.
Arilus, let me see. Can you give me the names?
Yes, the first's Rose Garden Apartments. I'd like to go with another friend in the last week of October.
Well, we've got a lovely studio flat available at that time. I'm sure you'd enjoy the entertainment programme there too, with Greek dancing in the restaurant.
And the cost for each of us?
£219.
That sounds very reasonable. I'm just jotting down some notes. Now, the second one she mentioned was called Blue Bay.
Blue Bay. Yes, in fact, that's very popular, and it has some special features.
Really?
The main attraction is the large swimming pool with salt water.
Much healthier, I understand.
That's right. And it isn't far from the beach either, only 300 metres. And only around half a kilometre to some shops, so you don't have to be too energetic.
Is it much more expensive than the first one?
Let me just check. I think at the time you want to go, it's around £260. No, £275 to be exact.
Right, I've got that. Now, there are just 2 more apartments to ask you about. I can't read my own writing. Something to do with sunshine, is it?
I think you meant the Sunshade Apartments. They're on a mountainside.
Any special features?
Yes, each room has its own sun terrace, and there are shared barbecue facilities.
Ooh, sounds lovely.
Yes, it is rather well equipped. It also provides water sports. It has its own beach. There are facilities for water skiing.
Any kite surfing? My friend's quite keen.
Not at the hotel, but I'm sure you'll find some in Arillis. There's also satellite TV in the apartments.
And how much is that one?
£490 with 2 sharing.
You mean £245 each?
I'm afraid not. Each person has to pay that amount and there must be at least 2 in an apartment.
Oh, I don't think that would be within our budget, unfortunately. And the last one sounds a bit expensive too. The Grand?
Actually, it's quite reasonable. It's an older style house with Greek paintings in every room and a balcony outside.
Sounds nice. What are the views like?
Well, there are forests all round and they hide a supermarket just down the road, so that's very useful for all your shopping needs. There's a disco in the area too.
And the price?
£319 at that time, but if you leave it till November, it goes down by 40%.
Too late, I'm afraid.
Well, why don't I send you a brochure with full details, Miss...
Nash. But don't worry about that. I'm coming to Upminster soon, and I'll call and get one. I just wanted to get an idea first.
Well, that's fine. We've got plenty here when you come.
If you've got a minute, could I just check a couple of points about insurance? I got one policy through the post, but I'd like to see if yours is better.
Fine. What would you like to know?
Well, the one I've got has benefits, and then the maximum amount you can claim. Is that like yours?
Yes, that's how most of them are.
Well, the first thing is cancellation. If the holiday's cancelled on the policy I've got, you can claim £8,000.
We can improve on that, Miss Nash. For Greek island holidays, our maximum is £10,000.
That's good. Of course, our holiday won't even cost £1,000 together.
It's still sensible to have good cover. Now, if you go to hospital, we allow £600.
Yes, mine's similar.
And we also allow a relative to travel to your holiday resort.
My policy just says their representative will help you.
You can see there's another difference there. And what happens if you don't get on the plane?
Nothing, as far as I can see on this form.
Don't you have missed departure?
No, I'll just jot that down.
We pay up to £1,000 for that, depending on the reason. And we're particularly generous about loss of personal belongings, up to £3,000, but not more than £500 for a single item.
Then I'd better not take my laptop.
Not unless you insure it separately.
OK, thanks very much for your time. You've really been helpful. Can I get back to you? Your name is...
Ben Ludlow. That's Ludlow. I'm the assistant manager here. I'll give you my number. It's 081 260 543 216.
But didn't I phone 081 260 567 294? That's what I've got on the paper.
That's the main switchboard. I've given you my direct line.
Right. Thank you very much for your time.
Conversation 6. A local business.
For the second in our series about locally run businesses, we meet Simon Winridge, co-founder of the hugely successful Winridge Forest Railway Park. Welcome, Simon. Now, perhaps you can begin by telling us a little bit about how it all started.
Well, during the 1970s, my wife Liz and I had just acquired 80 acres of sheep farming land, and we decided to settle down and have children. Pretty soon we had a daughter, Sarah, and a son, Duncan. The place was wonderful for the kids. They particularly loved trains and gradually built up an enormous network of miniature railway track. I began to develop larger-scale models of locomotives, but we didn't think anything more of it until I went on a trip to a theme park near Birmingham and decided we could do a much better job. So we set up a small one ourselves, based on the miniature railway, and we opened to the public for just a month that year, 1984, in July, our driest month. because our children said they didn't want our guests to have a miserable wet visit. I dealt with park business and Liz carried on with the farm work. It soon became clear that we were onto a winner. We began to extend the railway track and lay it among more interesting landscape by planting trees, which in turn attracted more wildlife, and by making cuttings through the rock. Nowadays, we're open all year round, and we're pleased to say that Wimridge is one of the most popular visitor attractions in the area, with 50,000 visitors a year. 1.5 million people have been through our doors since we opened. All these visitors mean we have had to expand our operation, and it's now a truly family concern. I'm near to retirement age, so I only concern myself with looking after the mechanical side of things, keeping the trains going. Liz now devotes all her energies to recruiting and supporting the large squadron of workers, which keep the place running smoothly. We're really pleased that, after some years away teaching, Sarah has now returned to the park and makes sure the visitors are kept fed and watered, which keeps her pretty busy, as you can imagine. Our son Duncan has been a stalwart of the park for the last 10 years, taking over from me in the area of construction. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. And his new wife, Judith, has also joined the team in charge of retail. That's becoming a tremendous growth area for us. A lot of people want to buy souvenirs.
Mm-hmm. So have you finished your development of the site for the moment?
Not at all. We're constantly looking for ways to offer more to our visitors. The railway remains the central feature, and there's now 1.2 kilometres of the line laid, but we'd like to lay more. Because of the geology of the area, our greatest problem is digging tunnels, but we're gradually overcoming that. We're also very pleased with a new installation of the go-kart arena, which is 120 square metres in area. Again, the problem is the geology. We had to level the mounds on the track for safety reasons. We wanted to enable 5 to 12-year-olds to use the go-karts. And the main attraction here is the Formula One kart. We've known fights to break out over who gets it. And then, finally, to our most recent development, which is the landscape swimming pool.
Conversation 7. Dissertation planning.
Ah, Caroline. Come on in, sit down.
Thanks.
So how's the dissertation planning going?
Well, Dr. Shulman, I'm still having a lot of trouble deciding on a title.
Well, that's perfectly normal at this stage. And this is what your tutorials will help you to do.
Right.
What we'll do is jot down some points that might help you in your decision. First of all, you have chosen your general topic area, haven't you?
Yes, it's the fishing industry.
Oh, yes, that was one of the areas you mentioned. Now, what aspects of the course are you good at?
Well, I think I'm coping well with statistics, and I'm never bored by it.
Good. Anything else?
Well, I found computer modelling fascinating. I have no problem following what's being taught, whereas quite a few of my classmates find it difficult.
Well, that's very good. Do you think these might be areas you could bring into your dissertation?
Oh, yes, if possible. It's just that I'm having difficulty thinking how I can do that. You see, I feel I don't have sufficient background information.
I see. Well, do you take notes?
I'm very weak at note-taking. My teachers always used to say that.
Well, I think you really need to work on these weaknesses before you go any further.
What do you suggest?
Well, I can go through the possible strategies with you and let you decide where to go from there.
Okay, thanks.
Well, some people find it helpful to organize peer group discussions. You know, each week a different person studies a different topic and shares it with the group.
Oh, right.
It really helps build confidence.
Yeah.
You know, having to present something to others.
I can see that.
The drawback is that everyone in the group seems to share the same ideas. They keep being repeated in all the dissertations.
Okay.
You could also try a service called Student Support. It's designed to give you a structured program over a number of weeks to develop your skills.
Sounds good.
Yes. Unfortunately, there are only a few places.
Ah.
But it's worth looking into.
Yes, of course. I know I've got to work on my study skills.
And then there are several study skills books you can consult.
Right.
They'll be a good source of reference. But the problem is, they are sometimes too general.
Yes, that's what I've found.
Other than that, I would strongly advise quite simple ideas, like using a card index.
Well, yes, I've never done that before.
It's simple, but it really works because you have to get points down in a small space. Another thing I always advise is don't just take your notes and forget about them. Read everything 3 times. That'll really fix them in your mind.
Yes. I can see it'd take discipline, but...
Well, if you establish good study skills at this stage, they'll be with you all your life.
Oh, yes, I completely agree. It's just that I don't seem to be able to discipline myself. I need to talk things over.
We'll be continuing these tutorials, of course. Let's arrange next month's now. Let's see. I can see you virtually any time during the week starting the 22nd of January.
What about the 24th? I'm free in the afternoon.
Sorry, I'm booked then. What about the following day?
The Thursday?
Yeah?
I can make the morning.
Fine. We'll go for the 25th then.
That's great. Thanks.
Conversation 8. Asking about health services.
Can I help you?
Yes, I've just moved to this area with my wife and children, and I'd like to know where we can all register with a doctor at a health centre.
Oh, OK. Well, there's Dr. Green at the Harvey Clinic. We always recommend her for babies because she's very good with them and she runs a special clinic.
Oh, actually, my youngest child is 5, so that wouldn't be any good for us.
Right.
Is there anywhere else I could try?
Yes, the Eshcol Health Practice is the next one on my list.
How do you spell that?
E-S-H-C-O-L. And it's Dr. Fuller who has space on his list. The clinic only opened a year ago, so the facilities are all very modern.
That sounds good.
And it's particularly good if you're busy during the day because they also do appointments in the evening. They're closed on Saturday, though. The only other place on the list is the health centre on Shore Lane. You can register with Dr. Gormley. That's G-O-R-M-L-E-Y. He's new there, but the centre has a very good reputation.
Oh, yes. I think I know the road. That would be the best one. Thanks. Could you tell me, will all their services be free?
There are usually some small charges that doctors make. Let me see what it says about the Shore Lane Centre. If you need to be vaccinated before any trips abroad, you won't have to pay for this. What else? The Sports Injury Treatment Service operates on a paying basis, as does the Nutritional Therapy Service. Some health centres do offer alternative therapies like homeopathy as part of their pay-to-use service. Shore Lane are hoping to do this soon. I think they may start with acupuncture. And finally, if you need to prove you're healthy or haven't had any serious injuries before a new employer will accept you, you can get a free fitness check-up there. But you'd most likely have to pay for insurance medicals, though.
OK, thanks.
You might also be interested to know the centre is running a pilot scheme of talks for patients. I've got the list here. Actually, they look very interesting.
What sort of things?
Well, the first one's about giving up smoking. It's next week, the 25th of February at 7 p.m, and that's in room 4. It says the talk will stress the health benefits, particularly for people with asthma or heart disease.
That sounds very interesting.
There's also a talk for families with children. It's on healthy eating and takes place on the 1st of March at 5 o'clock.
Will that be at the health centre?
Actually, it's at the primary school on Shore Lane. I imagine they're inviting the parents of pupils there. It says here, all welcome.
I might go to that if I have time.
There's a couple of other talks. One giving advice about how to avoid injuries while doing exercise. It's on the 9th of March. Oh, it's a late afternoon talk at 4:30. And it'll be in room 6. It also says the talk is suitable for all ages. And finally, there's a talk called Stress Management, which is on the...
Conversation 9. Problems in holiday home.
Hello?
Hi, it's Laura Carlton here. We've just arrived at the holiday flat, but I can't get the hot water and heating to work.
Oh, right. That's easy. Don't worry. In the upstairs cupboard, you'll find the water heater. You'll see 3 main controls on the left at the bottom of the heater. The first one, the round one on the far left, is the most important one for the heating and hot water. It's the main control switch. Make sure it's in the on position. The switch itself doesn't light up, but the little square below will be black if the switch is off. That's probably what's happened. It's got switched off by mistake. The middle one of these 3 controls, you'll see it's slightly larger than the first one, controls the radiators. If you feel cold while you're there and need the radiators on, this needs to be turned to maximum. The last of the 3 controls, the one on the right, is usually on about a number 4 setting, which for the water in the taps is usually quite hot enough. Below the heating controls in the middle is a small round plastic button. If there isn't enough water in the pipes, sometimes the heater goes out. If this happens, you'll need to press this button to reset the heater. Hold it in for about 5 seconds. It should come on again. Then there's a little square indicator under the 3rd knob that's a kind of alarm light. It'll flash if you need to reset the heater.
It sounds complicated.
I'm sure you won't have any problems with it. There should be some more instructions on the side of the heater. Call me back if you can't make it work.
OK. While you're on the phone, we haven't managed to find a few things we need, like extra